Hello, and welcome to the contrast analysis of the Arabic language by Lori, Emily, and Michael. So to start off, let's just talk about the term language and what is language. By definition, language can be defined as a method of communication, either spoken or written, consisting of the use of words in a structured and conventional way. It's also defined as the system of communication used by a particular culture, community, or country. So basically, language is communication, whether it be oral communication or facial expressions or written communication. All of it is looped under that umbrella term of language, and it varies and differs based on culture. All language originates from a particular source. That is also true with the Arabic language. The Arabic language originates from the Afro-Asiatic family of languages. That includes Arabic, Somali, and Hebrew. They're all Semitic languages. If you look to the top of this slide, the top right-hand corner, you'll see the continent of Africa. And all of the countries that are shaded tan, those are the Afro-Asiatic countries. Those are Afro-Asiatic speaking countries. Now, that does not mean those are all Arabic solely speaking countries. That just means those are the countries that fall, their languages are in that Afro-Asiatic family. If you look to the illustration in the bottom left-hand corner, however, that denotes Arabic-speaking countries. It's kind of color-coded, which is pretty simple to follow. The dark green, that means that country specifically, Arabic is the official language, and it's spoken by the vast majority of the country, over 50%. The lighter green is So, when we're talking about origins of the Arabic language, we are talking about where the language originated from. And the Arabic language originates from the Afro-Asiatic family of languages. That includes several languages. It includes Arabic. It includes Hebrew. It includes Somali. They're all Semitic languages. And if you look to the illustration in the upper right-hand corner of this slide, you'll see all of the top countries are kind of this tan color, and that tan is indicative of Afro-Asiatic speaking countries. That doesn't mean they all speak Arabic. That just means those countries, the languages that are spoken, fall in that Afro-Asiatic family umbrella. However, the lower slide, the illustration in the lower left-hand side, that does denote Arabic-speaking countries, and they're color-coded. So the darker green, that means those countries, the majority of them speak Arabic. Arabic is the official language. More than 50% of the population speaks it, so it is an Arabic speaking country. The lighter green is, though it is technically Arabic is the official language of that country, they don't necessarily all speak it. In fact, sometimes it's usually less than 50% of the population speaks Arabic in that country. When you shift over to the dark blue, that's actually that those countries have co-official languages, which means they'll have two official languages. One of the examples is Algeria. Algeria is a country where Arabic is the first official language, but it also speaks Berber. So those dark blue co-officials mean there's two languages, but Arabic is the first one. It's the majority spoken. Now the lighter blue, the converse is true. Yes, Arabic is one of the predominant languages spoken, but it is not the majority. So even though it's one of the co-official languages, it's not the one that's most widely used. So when we're talking development in stages of Arabic, obviously languages develop over time. They change over time with the people, with climates, with culture differences, with changes, with trends. Um, the earliest stages of Arabic were the Proto-Arabic, or they were considered the Old Arabic. Those are the early forms of the language, and they date back to the 3rd century. Back then, there was not very much written for the Arabic language. It was mostly an oral language, and it was passed down and handed off by storytellers or town historians oftentimes in prose. And not much was written down or collected systematically until about the 8th century when the language started to develop further. By the time we hit the 13th century, that's about the time where Middle Arabic kind of comes into play, and that the language of the Quran is written in Middle Arabic, and that's considered all classical literature of Arabic is written in this Middle Arabic. And even though most and all people speak modern Arabic now, they need to know Middle Arabic in order to understand, read, and interpret the Quran. Now, modern Arabic, that is today's Arabic. That's what's widely spoken in all of these countries. It's the universal language that the Arabic speaking population uses. It's understood by all Arabic speakers. Vast majority of contemporary writings are in modern Arabic, like, newspapers and books, movies, speeches, lectures, all of those TV shows, those are all in modern Arabic. So when considering the writing system, the Arabic writing system is pretty neat. It's very different from the American writing system. There's some commonalities, but there are a lot of differences. For example, we read from left to right, and they also read from left to right. But when we form and write and pronounce our words, we also do those from left to right. However, the Arabic writing system does not work that way. Their words are from right to left. Their numbers, like ours, are written from left to right also, but some Arabic letters change form depending on how they're used. What does that mean? Well, letters in Arabic are always joined together in writing, like it's written in script or cursive. They always write in cursive. It's derived from cursive. They use cursive. Their language has always been in this beautiful, flowy cursive form that contains 28 letters. But depending on what letters are being connected, like for example, writing a J would look one way when connecting to, say, a C, but it would have a different form if it were connecting to an L or an M, which is why it can be kind of hard to differentiate and learn Arabic, because writing the letters, it changes depending on what letters you're connecting them to. And letters are always joined together in Arabic, both written and typed, except in very, very rare cases. Regional varieties. Now, when you think of our country, how very different regionally our language is, even though we all speak the same language, it's the same in really any language, and also in Arabic. So depending on your region, that would be the variety of the language you would use. And with Arabic, there are over 20 different dialects and regional varieties. And both of these illustrations are color coded to show you the different varieties and how different countries have a different dialect. Kind of like how in Rhode Island, our accent and our diction and our expressions are so vastly different from, say, Texas. So when we're considering interesting facts that I was going to do a Dave Letterman's top 10, but that was kind of overplayed, so we're going to do the Super 7. I learned that in 1974, the UN adopted the Arabic language as one of the 6 United Nations official languages. It joined Chinese, English, French, Russian, and Spanish. We also learned that they are a very wordy language. What I mean by that is they have a lot of words for words in particular. For example, there is at least 11 words for love. There's over 100 words for camel. Another one that's way up there was God. There was over 100 words for God, over 50 words for beautiful. There is definitely no lack of word choices in the Arabic language. The Arabic language has sounds that do not occur in any other language, which means unless you are a native Arab speaker, or you've learned to speak Arab, or you were a baby, as we learned last semester, how babies can speak and say every sound needed to speak any language until they drop off the ones they don't need based on whatever language they have adopted. So unless you're a baby or you're a native Arab speaker, there are sounds you will not hear. Now, the shape of a letter in Arabic, the way it's formed written, reflects the shape your mouth makes while saying it. So, for example, the J sound has that curve because our mouth would kind of curve making that sound. It has the most curse words in a language. The Arabs might take the crown for the amount of swear words and phrases they have. The website I found, arabamerica.com, it says that there are many different levels to their swearing and different categories. Like, for example, there's insults to your mom. Anybody who teaches middle school, you've all heard those your mom jokes that are highly inappropriate. There are insults to God. Calling someone an animal or telling someone to do an animal act is actually highly offensive in the Arab culture. To compare people to animals is highly offensive, apparently. And they also have common phrases that we can hear in English that kind of are similar. But two horrible words in Arabic can easily hit harder than any slew of English insults we can come up with. So it'd be hard to go toe to toe in the insult category. We definitely lose. The Arabic language is beautifully written, and it's written mostly in cursive, only in cursive actually, which we discussed earlier in a few slides. And it takes the average human 1.67 years to learn Arabic. So in 2 years, if you really put the time in, you would probably be pretty conversational in the Arabic speaking world. At the bottom of the slide, you'll see a few websites. I think one of the most informative ones was the very last one where it says 101languages.net. That one had a list of the 1,000 top most commonly used words in the Arabic language. And it was a really cool site because it wrote the word in Arabic, it gave the English translation, and then there was a sound bite that you could press to hear how the word sounded so you could learn the words. I hope you enjoyed reading about interesting facts. And now we're going to transition on over to Mike.
Thanks, Emily. Again, we'll be comparing, continue on a little more academic, comparing linguistic features. Arabic does have 28 consonants and 8 vowels. English has 24 consonants and 22 vowels, given short and long forms, as well as different blends. Type of writing that Arab has is abjad. We use a Roman alphabet in English. Direction of writing, they write from the words themselves are written from right to left and read from left to right. The numbers go same order as Roman numerals. No, they're or Roman. I should say Roman numerals. Our numbering system to their numbering system, which is Arabic, but their numbers don't look the same. But then this is linguistics, not math class. Also, number of letters, I did say 28 of the consonants. They may use additional letters for other languages, and they blend them in there using their cursive script. Short vowels are not important, so they don't appear in the writing, but they do put something above that, similar to a tilde or an umlaut, just to denote whether it should be long or short, rather in nature. Again, text are read from right to left, or the words are. Distinction is made between upper and lower case. It just, I don't want to say it's haphazard. It's they know what they're doing when they write, and they do a great job of it. Rules for punctuation are much looser, and I guess you know where the thought ends. Grammar. There is no to be in the current present tense. So again, a little bit different than they don't have those helping or auxiliary verbs that we have in English. There's just a single present tense now in Arabic as opposed to our many present tense forms. Okay, there will be some difficulties as there are with any people speaking a new language from Arabic to English. Problems include inability to produce a var sound. So once we reach a certain age, we do lose. I guess we're pre-programmed, as Emily has said, to have all the different sounds known to mankind, I guess, or at least pre-programmed. We lose those over time, and it does become tougher to learn a new language over time. They will have trouble with the TH sounds, swapping the B and the P, and substitution F for V. I noticed that in some of the Hispanic people as well. I don't know if that's a carryover from the Saracen days of Spanish rule or ruling over Spain years ago. It's interesting that those are issues that I see. Clusters, like we have the SP, the TH, may be issues, as well as the some of the vowels in such words, putting in place an extra vowel in those words, rather than just split it and through it. I threw in length as I definitely have heard that through some of my Arabic students, and when I was over there many years ago. Uh, and the vocabulary, what makes it tough is the lack of cognates or similar words in English to Spanish. Uh, Spanish does have some similarities, and then there are some Italian words that will blend with Arabic, but England, I guess, was too far away when they and didn't get that merging of languages. So yes, the cognates aren't there. It would be similar to us learning Chinese. Just the language is so far apart. What other they may have, in not having these cognates would be tougher for them to comprehend initially. And you would need a much larger word store or vocabulary. You really need to build that vocabulary. So word walls would be great in the Arabic English learner community. And let's go on. I do have a link there on Arabic grammar for your assistance. That'd be great for you. And on to the next slide. Okay, we're discussing syntax in Arabic versus English. Arabic words are in three classes similar to English. We have nouns, people, places, things, and ideas. Verbs being the action, and the particles, with prepositions, uh, which are common to many languages. Arabic prepositions are divided into two morphological groups, or change. They're the first class of prepositions that are inseparable from the action, and usually follow the object noun. Uh, you see when we do at, by, or with, when we connect them up. Okay. Second class is made of prepositions which are independent. So that'd be the difference. English, a preposition is one of 8 parts of speech. They have 3 parts of speech. English is being a little more complicated. Uh, and we usually show direction in our prepositions, or the relationship of exclusion. They don't have the relationship of exclusion in their prepositions or in their particles. We connect the noun and pronoun to another word in the sentence, and that's what it does for us. Okay, and those are the similarities and differences. Okay, a little bit on Arabic versus English phonology. English does have about 3 times as many vowel sounds as Arabic. Class number has, we talked about the consonant phonemes of 28 and the semi-vowels. We do have a couple of semi-vowels in English that I recall from way back when. The Y and W. W is probably very debatable, but I remember that from like first, second grade for some reason, Miss Kinney's class. And Miss Brady's class way back when in 1960 something. It was a long time ago. So it has they have 6 vowel phonemes, 3 short and 3 long. We talked about how they do that earlier when we were talking about the morphology. Short vowels are not usually representative language. Their critics are in there similar to the umlaut and tilde. Well, the umlaut in German and the tilde in Spanish. And that's some basic phonology that we haven't discussed before. And I'm going to move on to the next slide. Okay, we're going to talk a bit about morphology, the conjugation of words, just beyond verbs, about how words change depending on their intended meaning in a sentence. in their positioning. Again, they have three types of words: nouns, verbs, prepositions, or participles. Morphology is applied to only nouns and verbs because they can be changed depending on the tense, depending on the person. Uh, Many languages being male, female, or neutral, in past, present, and future, as well as the variations thereof. Uh, Arabic, again, we did speak a little bit on the morphology in an earlier slide. Uh, but prepositions are what they are. You're placing that particular object noun at a particular place and time in reference to the action happening. A change of the word from one form, and again, that's the basic definition of a conjugation, whether it be a noun conjugation or the verbal conjugation, which we're probably all familiar with. Okay, there's a little bit more on elementary Arabic morphology there from that. Al-Islam is I believe, a study of both classical Arabic of the Quran as well as modern Arabic. So, but if you really want to get your language geek on, that's a nice site to look at. Okay, on language pragmatics. Being practical with our language. We have sometimes different ways of discussing things, and we see that here in the English language. Been to many places in the world. People speak English all over the world. Very convenient for somebody like myself who's traveling, who maybe got a 2 week lessons in 40 hours worth of lessons in 2 weeks prior to deploying someplace in the world. But come to find out, I found so spoke English in the local language better than I did. So that's how I had worked my communications with the locals to get work jobs done. But I've noticed different places speak it differently. I recall Egyptian Arabic was very different from the Arabic of the Levant, which is Syria, or of the eastern departments of Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, and then the Mesopotamian Valley in Iraq was very different from that. But where they could understand each other, but they all resorted to what they learned in school was the modern Arabic as well as the classical Arabic of the Quran, similar to many religions using the Jacobean English of Shakespeare and the King James Bible. And that was very practically here in the United States and Canada for years. But it was a go-to language that all could understand. Very different today. But pragmatics is what is practical for us to use in a given area. I know we're talking about the bubbler and gagas, and that's wicked cool here in New England. Uh, but I go someplace else, and rather than a grinder, I can get a hoagie. So yes, there are pragmatics here, and I could be in New York and get a coney, which would be the same thing as a Rhode Island gagger. So again, the Arabs have the pragmatics for their different regions as well as regional variations of their languages throughout. Arabic in Indonesia is very different than Arabic in Morocco. So yes, it does change a bit. Okay, so that's on pragmatics, and to the next slide. Okay, on semantics. Again, very general definition of semantics. Depending on the position of the word, defines its meaning. What's the relation of the word to the objects that are nearby? Relation to the words, how one interprets them. And the formal relations, what does the syntax, what's the general rules of syntax for that? How should it be said? Semantics might take a different variation on this in relation to the syntax. Then beyond that, you'd have what are called pragmatics, which would be, what are we as conversationalists, as the people in this conversation interpreting it as, very much what the semantic might be or the syntax might be. Again, semantics are the general rules of the language, and the syntax would be the grammatical rules of how that sentence is spoken. Okay, this particular is on discourse varieties of Arabic. I believe Emily had mentioned that earlier in her discussion with the maps there, and this is a little more detail on that. Classical Arabic, the oldest type of Arabic that's studied widely. This is the language of the Quran, and different Arabic texts. Many of our early algebra and geometry books were written in this classical Arabic that we had gotten off of the from that particular area. Uh, and modern standard Arabic is another discourse variety. Those again the two standards, similar to our Jacobian English, which is just slightly modern version of Middle English, and the modern English that we speak today, which still in my 50-something years has, in my mind, is morphed a little bit. And then there's colloquial Arabic, the Arabic they speak every day on the streets, whether it be in Cairo or in Riyadh or Damascus or Baghdad or even in Indonesia or uh, in Chicago or in Providence. uh, and there's a certain way of just how locals will have their discourse, their discussion. Again, there's some large ones, the Maghreb in Morocco, which is more the African or northwest, West African areas. There's Libya and Egypt in the Saharan area, the Levant, which is like say the western part of the Fertile Crescent of Syria, Jordan, Palestine, maybe very eastern, the Sinai, that area, and parts of western Iraq, not quite the Mesopotamian Valley, and then the Gulf area, which would be Saudi Arabia, Yemen, the Arabian Peninsula, and lower Mesopotamia, Basra, the Basra area, Baghdad, and south. Would be the particular areas. Further up again is the Levant, but the Gulf area is unique, and even eastern Saudi Arabia and Bahrain and Qatar are very different from than if you were over on the Red Sea. A little different over there. With different variations that I've known that it's not mentioned on the slide, and I remember when I had my basic courses in Arabic, I used some of it. They said, "You're speaking Egyptian Arabic," and I said I had an Egyptian teacher. So a little humor there, and little adventures over there in the Middle East. Okay, so we'll continue to discuss. Okay, this one slides on Arabic cultural norms. Arabic culture is much more collectivist and not definitely nowhere near as individualistic as the United States. It's rather shocking. We do have students coming in from Syria, and I notice they tend to be not as collectivist or as conservative as those in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. Very different world. I don't want to say a totally different world. I mean, I do see the similarities in the cultures, but definitely different from the American standpoint, especially when I'm at Central High School, uh, and the cultural mores and what's considered okay there. Versus, and I know some of my Syrian students are rather shocked, but they're learning and they do it with a smile, which is always nice. But again, they when they first come, they're very much that collector's high context culture and very afraid of risk. Americans are risk takers. We're a little crazy, and we're highly individualistic. We believe we're unique. Maybe the idea is a little bit between both for sanity's sake. But we've got to respect that and get them to where they can be and be fully functioning and practical members who can really grow in our society. And many have in the past. Many of my people who do business with Pakistani friends, Arabic friends, Egyptian friends who have taken and done very well here in America. And I hope the same goes for them. But again, their families are very tight. nuclear families, extended families. It's important in the Quran. Honor thy mother and thy father. They know that, they know their Old Testament, they know their New Testament, and they know their Quran. And they abide in those rules. And I was given a lecture a few times when I was in the Middle East on that, and they were able to quote directly. Uh, they'll consider ways to better the group before themselves. It's the group before the individual. One sacrifices for the group. There is that sense of duty group, and you maintain, that group backs you, where they got your back, and you got their back. That interdependence, that interconnected web, so to speak, and don't disrupt the harmonics of the group by being a rebel or an individual. That's frowned upon. Okay, and they believe that is good for the group's survival. Uh, and here's another little bullet on here. Most Arabs regard people who discuss business immediately as being brusque and rude. Uh, I wanted to always get to the point over there, which I found I need to kind of sit and enjoy my chai a little more and make sure I go through the dining process, which could take hours, and it's good conversation. I found it rather interesting, and in the end, it was fun. You get to spend time really to know someone. You might not have gotten business done right away, but you at least made a good relationship, and you've got many gifts upon. I know I got many things from people when I left, trinkets and the like. Which was very nice. I gave them some military patches in exchange, but it was a great thing. But I noticed that, yeah, don't negotiate. Negotiate slowly, uh, and they will, they end up building a trust. They got to know they feel right by you. And I got what they would call, they just called it shy. And the only thing I wouldn't, the food was always good. They tried to Americanize it, which is really cool. So they were meeting me halfway, so to speak. But again, it's all about relationships with the people in the Middle East. Okay, some classroom techniques or some tips for you to use when dealing with people from the Middle Eastern cultures. Uh, in order to be a culturally competent and maintain a culturally responsive teaching practice, here are some tips that you'll need to meet the people from the Middle East, our Syrian students as well as from other areas in that particular region. Uh, Initially, they're used to that high context, high power authority, uh, and that traditional teacher-centered learning versus a student-centered learning. They may get a little bit confused if you try that right away. So ease them into it. Gradual release programs are excellent for this. You can later get into project-based learning, and I would still use get into that inquiry-based. So they're doing the investigating, but not, and again, not right away. Set them up for success. Maybe it is the traditional front loading that you would do rather than just quick have them do some of the book with some more traditional work right away, and then slowly ease into that PBL, that inquiry based. Let them learn to investigate, because I do think when I see the students in my classroom, I see them as wanting that. I see the fire in their eyes once they get that. I love seeing that. And I think that you're gradually getting them used to the American cultural norms. They get used to the kids around them being a little bit more open, a little bit more, from their perspective, wild Americans. But they kind of like it. And again, working with teenagers, I think teenagers love it, and I think young kids like occasionally. It's kind of like little kids scaring themselves. This may be scary, but I'll try it anyway. And so again, ease them through gradual release programs. It allows them to become acclimated to American classroom and more productive in American society. Uh, Again, so many people from the Arab world have contributed so much to our culture and our economy here in the United States, and in the Western world. Okay, families from the culture. This is getting directed to the families. They're polychromatic. I want to say chromatic societies. Time is really not as relevant as it would be. It's okay. We'll get there. We'll be there. Oh, we'll see you around middle of the day. uh, from being over there, you might do something for a few hours. It could only take 5-10 minutes here in the United States, but it was part of the adventure, and that may still be there. I think depending on where they're from in the Middle East, Syria being a little bit more advanced, more Western, doesn't seem to be as much. But again, we see that here in the what they call the island manana, or whatever it is in Hawaii. They're the hang loose kind of thing. Yeah, we'll get there when we'll do it when we get it done. And then same thing like negotiating. So I was talking about earlier when we're negotiating, take your time doing it. There's no rush. And they may not see something as a problem that a teacher might see as a problem, but they may be late for appointments. They may not keep it at all. Teachers and administrators should also say, hey, we're calling you to help discuss your child's future. But again, it's telling them the time's important because we have other things to do as well, and you do too. And I think they get used to that. They understand that. I was reading something a little bit about being a male-dominated society. Outside the home, the man is king. Inside the home, from what I heard from some Arabic husbands who have multiple wives, head wife is in charge at the home. I said, how do you feel about that? But that's another story for another day. But he's your liaison because you're in the outside world. You're going to speak with him. And he will consult his wife, and they will make the appropriate pointer, and he'll give her permission to go outside and speak with that. And that's cool. I understand that. And to them, it is not sexist. It's like, that is my role, and that is how Allah or God has deemed it to be. So then they will pretty much follow up. And again, if we're working with these communities, just like with any other community, meet with community leaders. There are mullahs, the ones running the Islamic clergy. The mullahs hold great power and sway within the communities. Dig deep into those communities, get some roots in there so they understand and help the kids out. Again, it's all for the kids and making sure they get an appropriate education. So I'm going to, these are my slides. I'm going to let Lori discuss her slides. And take it away, Lori.
Each cultural group has its own set of unwritten communication rules. These include nonverbal behaviors such as body language, closeness, gestures, and touching. Unwritten rules also include cultural norms and values like gender or class roles. When comparing one cultural group to the next, perhaps the best place to begin our comparison is examining whether the group is a high context culture or a low context culture. In America, we are a low context culture. This means that we are specific and direct in our language. We tend to say what we mean rather than talk around a subject or allude to something. In a low context culture, the responsibility of accurate communication falls to the person who is speaking rather than to the person that is listening. In an article written by Saharna, 1995, examples of our low context direct style is found in some of our expressions, such as say what you mean, don't beat around the bush, and get to the point. In America, we use language to transmit information and are expected to be accurate and factual. However, in a high context culture like Syria, meaning is embedded in the context of what is being spoken. The listener is the one responsible to decipher what is being said. Hall, 1976, explains that in a high context culture, the speaker will more likely talk around the subject. Therefore, The listener will need to put the pieces together in order to fully understand what is being said. In a high context culture, language is more abstract and embellishments are valued. Americans and Syrians do not only differ in terms of whether or not we speak directly or indirectly, we also differ in terms of our nonverbal language. Let's begin with closeness. For Americans, we tend to stand about 0 to 1.5 feet away from someone we know intimately and 4 to 12 feet away from someone we are socially involved with. Syrians tend to stand much closer to the person they are speaking with and do not place the same importance on maintaining personal space. Touching is another area of difference between Americans' cultural norm and Syrians. In America, men rarely touch one another except when shaking hands. However, it is not uncommon for Syrian men to kiss or hold hands for an extended period of time with another man they are friends with or think fondly of. Syrians, in contrast to Americans, touch often while interacting. This holds true for both men and women. However, it should be noted that it is considered taboo for a man to touch a woman or a woman to touch a man if they are not related. Syrians are known to gesture in a rather animated fashion, much more so than Americans. Syrians also tend to speak louder than we typically do. To an American observing this, we might tend to think the discussion is heated or hostile, when in fact it is the typical manner in which they communicate. It is important for us to be aware of these differences and how they might impact the students in the classroom. The first way a Syrian student might experience difficulty is simply a nonverbal communication style. If a male Syrian student attempts to hold another boy's hand out of friendship, the American boy might not only take offense, but might view this as highly inappropriate and could lash out. As noted earlier, it is common to touch in Syria when interacting. However, in American schools, we have a keep your hands and feet to yourself policy. This might cause confusion for a Syrian student. Also, a Syrian student might be accustomed to speaking loudly and using more exaggerated hand gestures. An American student might view this as aggressive and negatively respond. As teachers, we can add an important buffer to these possible situations, easing the transition for all. Teachers need to be aware of a Syrian student's speaking style and how this might impact them in their classwork. As we learned earlier, Syrians tend to be less direct than we do. This could certainly impact the way in which they contribute to class discussions or sharing their learning. Teachers need to be cognizant of the fact that if a Syrian student is not conveying their learning or thinking completely, it might just be their communication style rather than not knowing or understanding the material. One way in which we can help these students is by purposely asking them clarifying questions. Teachers also can help these students by giving them other means to share their learning. For example, a written component rather than just a spoken component to assignments. Another note on family involvement. Teachers should be mindful that although it is common for Syrians to be much more comfortable than we are with physical contact, it is not common for men and women to touch. Therefore, a female teacher should never be the first to offer a handshake to a male. If he extends his hand first, by all means, but don't initiate this typical American greeting. Likewise, a male teacher should never initiate touching a student's female family member, and again allow the female to initiate this exchange if she wishes to. As with any student in our charge, we must take them as the individual that they are. We must remember that these are generalizations meant to guide us. We must learn what we can about each student in our class and do our best to use what we know to help him or her become as successful as he or she can.